Okay, yeah. Hi everyone. Today we're going to do. Oh, sorry. Let me stream. We're gonna do a lesson two. We're gonna do a lesson on Japanese songs. Me and Welly are going to go through two songs. And basically we're gonna listen to them, and then we're just gonna look at the Japanese in the songs. Since it's a beginner lesson, we're just gonna go through like the basic structures of sentences and some of the particle usages and things like that. So I hope you enjoy. So first of all, I selected a song from the end of Makia, the anime Makia, which is a very popular film. I'm just going to share my screen now so you can see. So what we'll do first with both songs is we'll listen to the song first, and then we'll go through it, do a read through, and then look at some of the vocabulary, some of the grammar, and then we will listen to the song one more time, and hopefully you guys will understand a bit more. Okay, so cool. Just move this. Chop them up there. Okay. Okay. So, also as we're going through the lesson, if you've got any questions or anything, you can either put them in the study room chat, or if you want to speak during the lesson, you can. I'll give a time in the lesson where you can ask questions and stuff and speak. But throughout the lesson, you can just type in the study room thoughts and comments that you have. Okay, so literally, we're going to just go through, do a read through of the lyrics. So hopefully, can I draw on the PowerPoint as well? Actually, I've got an idea. So first one is Chippoke na hoshio. What I wanted to do is I'm gonna look at each sentence. So I'm gonna look at this in a different slide here. And just to break it down, for those of you, depending on what level you are, I think, and actually I think it's important in general when you're just practicing Japanese, it's important for pronunciation. So this small tsu is very important to watch out just in general when you're speaking. So it's got no pronunciation by itself, but it's like uses a small pause. So you can say like chippoke, but not chipoke because that's wrong. So an example is the word for school is gakko, gakko. So usually in Romanji you might see it written with double letters, but it's important to pronounce with that pause. So that's just something to look out for. Mawari suzukete, so continue to go around. Afure so ni kagaete, and then nagarete iku, and kirei na mama de. With the last line, kirei na mama de, it's probably, fortunately, you don't have to learn the whole kanji for the whole thing. So what I mean is that the kanji looks really complicated, but it's quite normal to just say kire with hiragana or katakana, and that's usually common to use. But here we've got also kire na mama de. Mama is like to stay as it is, like in a state. So the grammar in this is, in Japanese, you have two different types of adjectives. So you have adjectives that end with E and adjectives that don't end with E. So you have E adjectives, not adjectives. The reason why it's E adjectives is because they end with E. For example, oki hito, which I've put the wrong definition. I'll go and change it after. Oki hito actually meant to say a large person, but apparently I was tired when I was doing that. So oki hito. So because it's got e, you don't have to do anything to that adjective. Whereas kirei, although it has an E at the end, because that E is part of the kanji, and this is an exception, it takes the na part. So, for example, if you're using a verb such as kantan, which I'm literally going to just type now, because, and you get some, not verbs, sorry, like a adjective, kantan. Because that uses the two kanji, it doesn't have an e at the end. So if you're going to describe something as easy, something is easy, you can just say na. For example, I don't know, test, easy test. But it's important to include that na at the end of any adjective that doesn't have a e at the end. So that's just something to look out for. E adjectives, na adjectives, that sort of thing. Okay, so cool. So then if we continue, aruki dasu, ai o tsurete, 奏でるように信じてる。どんな形でも太陽は昇るからきっと。So, as you can see, you got this Japanese definition, you got the Romanji, and you got the English. Now, just focusing on this because I want to focus on the kanji. Like Kire, the kanji for love might look complicated at first, but it's easy to, when you're approaching any sort of kanji, just to break up that kanji. Each kanji is made up of smaller components. So as you can see, this kanji for love, you can split it up into different components, and that can help you to remember kanji. So I'd recommend, if you are like struggling to learn kanji, start with learning kanji that's more simple, and learn the like simple components, and how, like, for example, the kanji for one is just a straight line, so those stuff are easy to learn. And then kanji will get, as it gets more complicated, already having that knowledge of easier components, it'll be easier to understand kanji. For example, this kanji here is heart. Yeah, so literally you can remember that's heart, love. It's quite useful there. So you can use sources such as remember the kanji, or wanikani. There's sources online that can help you to learn kanji in an order, so you don't get overwhelmed with the amount of kanji that you have to learn. We've also got a kanji video on a YouTube page, which you can find in the lesson channel if you want to look into that. Okay, so we're looking at this sentence, just this first part, 太陽は昇る. So 太陽, that's the topic, so it follows with the particle wa. Wa is pronounced as wa instead of ha. This is actually, as a hiragana, is ha. When used as a particle, it's used as wa. And because the topic of this whole situation is like, no matter what, the sun will rise. So no matter what is relating to this as the topic. So this has the attention, the focus, the taiyo. So that's the important part. So you mark it with wa. Noboru means to climb. So literally, the sun climbs. Something that I've literally just noticed, and I don't know if this will help, but that kanji is the kanji for day, or the kanji for sun as well, on top of this small radical. So I guess maybe it's related to the sun rising, I'm not sure. But if you can find like small stories in kanji, like if you can find small bits of radicals, that's what they're called, that help you to remember kanji, and like make a little story in your mind, it might help you remember it a lot better. So again, repeat, jipoke na hoshi yo. Should also say that here hoshi again has a sun radical at the top, so it's like star, sun. It's a similar thing, maybe. So you could use that to remember, and it's got the life radical underneath. So a sun that gives life, maybe stars, I don't know. You see, you can make a story up with that. Ochita namadi wa, and 溢れそうな優しさを見せてくれる。もう一度笑って。What did I put for? Okay. Right. So, a common phrase, for example, if you don't understand someone speaking Japanese, you can actually, a common phrase to use is maybe もう一度お願いします. お願いします means please. So if you say もう一度 is basically you're asking one more time, please. can you say that one more time? You can also say mo ikkai, to ask someone mo ikkai onegai shimasu, which is basically saying, please just repeat that one more time, I didn't understand. Again, here with ichido, ichi, that's the kanji for one I was talking about, just a straight line. And dot means time, so more ichido, one more time. And if you say more ikkai, again, that's got a small tsu, ikkai, so it's important to remember that small tsu when pronouncing that. Okay, yeah, cool. So then this line, which I've just put on a separate slide. So maybe a few phrases you can remember from this. Most of you probably already know nani anyway, but there's probably important to remember to speak formally and informally. You might hear in anime a lot people saying, I don't know, anime characters saying nani, and you can't do that when you speak in Japanese in general. So you might want to draw attention to something. You might say nan desu ka, nan desu ka, or sore wa. So sore wa, the wa particle, topic particle, sore wa nan desu ka. So what is that, or something like that, which is more formal. I mean, you could probably say nani like an anime character, a shonen character. It could probably work. Okay, but I take this particular grammar point, no naka ni, which means inside. So here it says sono mune no naka ni. So it literally says inside your chest. This is chest, but translation will be better to say inside your heart. So it's basically saying what's inside. So you add no nakani. No is a particle that's saying like possessive of something. So if it's belonging to something. So if I'm saying watashi no bagu desu, I'm saying it's my bag, and I join watashi, me, and bagu. Again, that's got a small tsu, but it's in katakana, so I've got to remember to say bagu. Watashi no bagu desu. Not that, yeah. So that has a not between, which connects both watashi and bagu. So that means it's my bag. This bagu no naka ni means inside the bag. Inside, naka means inside. And then what is inside? You could say, I don't know, ringo ga aru. So I've got an apple in my bag. Or what would I have in a bag? I don't know. Something, nanika ga aru. So I've got something in my bag or something. Sure. So if you have something in your bag, you can, or if you have anything, you could reizouko no naka ni, inside my fridge. Tamago ga ippai ga aru. I've got lots of eggs inside of my fridge. So you can use it to say inside something. So that's quite a useful expression. Then we've got aru. Should also say there's two, before we go into aru and iru, which I'll give you time to think of what's the difference between this aru and iru, which both mean to have. So you can think of that. But this not in particular, there's actually three not. So this sono means that. It's almost like uses sore, but instead of sore, which is that, it's changed to sono, and that not basically connects to mune. So sore means that, sono also means that, mune no also possessive particle, but this at the end isn't a possessive particle, unlike these two. This one is used for a question. So like if you want to ask a question, it can sound a bit more feminine, but um その胸の中に何があるの um that not means you're kind of asking a question or you want to sound a bit more feminine. If you wanted to just say it normally, you don't have to include the not and just have a rising intonation. その胸の中に何がある and just rise がある and then that rising would suggest that you're asking a question. So aru and iru, the difference, I did a little again, I guess this helps. I don't know. I thought it was cool. Aru is for things that are not alive, and iru is for things that are alive. So if you've got a inu ga inu, you've got a dog. Inu ga iru, because the dog is alive, and it's a living thing. So you describe living things with iru, and you describe things like a rock that don't live as aru. The reason why I picked a rock and a snake is because I guess eat looks like a snake and a can kind of look like a rock. So I suppose if you're struggling to decide which one to use, maybe that will help. Again, you gotta have fun with it. You gotta have fun with this, I suppose. But yeah. Okay, so sentence order in Japanese is generally backwards. Literal translation would be a bit rough. That chest inside, what have, and it's all important to know that Japanese is a contextual language. So taking a sentence sometimes by itself, or taking a phrase or something by itself, may not make sense on its own, but it might make sense in the general context. So verbs usually come at the end of the phrase, and everything else comes before the verb. To think of a verb as like an engine of a vehicle and everything else as the passengers. You need the engine to work the vehicle to make it drive, but if you have passengers and no engine, it's not going to work. In other words, if you're going to, usually, if you're thinking of the grammar, it's good to remember that you can just say verbs by itself and it will make sense. Usually, although it depends on certain situations, just using, say, a sentence without a verb wouldn't make sense unless there was some context behind it. So you could literally say taberu. So you ask someone taberu, and then they could answer, oh, taberu. And taberu means to eat. So you can literally just use a verb to kind of describe what you want to say, but verb is more important. Whereas in English, it would be like, do you want to eat? You have to kind of refer to who you're talking to. You can't just say eat by itself. It doesn't really make sense. Okay, so the last sentence, 歩き出す愛になって光の中へ大丈夫どんな未来でも太陽は昇るからきっと This particle, just want to quickly go over. Before I do that, hikari no naka, just to show you, you got this no naka, which means like light inside. So it's inside the light. But what does the e mean? So the e actually suggests towards somewhere. So it's another particle that you might see as a hiragana pronounced as he, but actually when it's used as a particle, it's just pronounced as e, and it means you're going towards something. So if I say, for example, Nihon e ikimasu, Nihon e ikimasu, it means I'm going towards Japan, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go specifically to Japan. It might be I'm just going past Japan, but I'm going in that direction. So it's a bit more vague. So this is kind of towards the light, but maybe the light isn't so much a destination. Whereas if you're going to use ni particle, that would be more specific, as saying Nihon ni kimasu means my intention is to go to Japan, to stay in Japan or something, for more permanent time. So yeah, ni, those two particles can be used for traveling. So that's just something to remember. As you're learning Japanese, nuance is quite important. And so it's important to try and, I know particles might seem difficult and intimidating at first, but it's important just to look at particles and not just look at them by themselves, but listen to them and how they're used in the context. If you like watch animes, listen to a particle and then read subtitles or whatever and see what certain things, certain words or phrases mean within the context, and maybe repeat them out loud, and it helps you to understand why you'd use this instead of this. Yeah, okay, there's nothing much in this one, but I always thought I'd look at this. I guess Mirai, future, which you probably know from Mirai Nikki, hi, which is a really popular anime. I guess most of you have probably seen it. Daijoubu, it's okay. Again, daijoubu is a pretty useful phrase. Daijoubu. Like, there's so many uses of it. Daijoubu. Like, if you're asking a question, it's like, are you okay? Daijoubu. But then if you're saying, I'm okay, daijoubu. Or if you're saying, oh, it's fine, you can say, daijoubu. Funny, interesting thing is that you can see all these different kanji look quite similar, but they're all quite different. This might be confusing, but if you're learning kanji, it's probably better to learn them with words and phrases rather than learn them by themselves. Because if you learn them by themselves, then you'll come across maybe a kanji that think you look similar and it might get confusing. Whereas if you learn like the words and you learn the kanji within the words, it can help you remember it in a context rather than by itself. So that's just a tip. But yeah. If you've got any questions, you can ask, or I think most of you put stuff in the chat anyway. I wasn't looking, but yeah, that's basically my part done. And Wally, if you want to do your song and go through yours, if that's cool.
Okay.
Cool, and I'll just share your screen and I'll just hop off.
Yep, that's cool.
Cool. Hold on.
I'll just get out of that screen. How do I leave? 1 second. There we are. Okay. So, hello everybody. I think it's my first time chatting on this channel. So today I would be going through the ending song to the very first Bage Monogatari anime series, and that is Kimino Shiranai Monogatari. And just let me bring my PowerPoint up. Screen. If my Discord will load, that would be great. How do I do this? No, I don't want to disconnect. Share your screen. There we
go. Are you showing the application one first?
Yeah, that's the point. I should probably show the actual song first. So I'll start with playing the song, okay, and then we'll go over a bit of background, and then the PowerPoint. If there are any issues with the volume, for example, just let me know and I'll adjust it here. So you should be able to see a YouTube screen now, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll start playing now.
いつも通りのある日のこと君は突然立ち上がり言った今夜星を見に行こうたまにはいいこと言うんだ ていて笑った明かりもない道をバカみたいにはしゃいで歩いた抱え込んだ孤独や不安に押しつぶされないように真っ暗な世界から見上げた夜空は星が降るようでいつからだろう君のことを追いかける私がいたどうかお願い驚かないで聞いてよ私のこの想いを荒れかてねぶあるタイルベが君の指さす夏の大三角覚えて空を見るやっと見つけた織姫様だけどどこだろう彦星様これじゃ一人ぼっち楽しげな一つ隣の君私は何も言えなくて本当はずっと君のことをどこかで分かっていた見つかったって届きはしないダメだよ泣かないでそう言い聞かせた強がる私は臆病で興味がないようなふりをしてただけど胸をさす痛みは増してくああそうか好きになるってこういうことなんだねどうしたい言ってごらん心の声がする君の隣がいい真実は残酷だ言わなかった言えなかった二度と戻れないあの夏の日きらめく星今でも思い出せる
Okay, so now that is the song that we played, and I'm just going now to... Oh, wait, something happened. You said you could autoplay. No. Okay, let's get rid of that. So going back, I will now share my PowerPoint. Application, now what do I do? Change windows. Is that what I do? Screen.
Yeah, change it to screen.
There we are.
Yeah.
Got there in the end.
Cool.
So, bringing us back then to the PowerPoint. So from that, once I open the PowerPoint on full screen, I will not be able to see the Discord chat. So if Tyreek can handle that side of it, if there are any questions, or just let me know, sort of using vocals, and I'll sort of respond on here as well. So that was Kimino Shiranai Monogatari by Supercell. And it was a song that was originally released in 2009. And the lyrics of the story, as you might be able to tell from the melody as well, it's quite a sad song. Talks about a love story where a girl falls in love with the guy and he is basically in love with somebody else. Just let me get rid of this slide because we have seen that. So during the actual song, you hear the mentions of Orihime-sama and Hikoboshi-sama. And that is to tie in with the summer triangles and the Altair and Vega, the two stars within that triangle. And that's the Japanese names for them. And in the original folktale, I'm not going to read out everything on the slide. If you're interested, you can always go back and give that a read. But there are a lot of different versions of what actually happens in that story. But the gist of it is that they fall in love and then they get ripped apart. So on the 7th day of the 7th month every year, they're allowed to meet for that one day. And they meet on a bridge under a flock of magpies. So it's kind of like the Romeo and Juliet scenario where originally the love story was not a happy ending anyways. And moving on then to the lyrics. So there's a lot of words there. I'm not going to be going over everything. So I'm just going to read through the lyrics once, and then I'll pick out one verse where we will go through the lyrics in greater detail. So, いつも通りのある日のこと、君は突然立ち上がり言った。今夜星を見に行こう。So whilst I'm reading through this, I appreciate if you could either look through the Romaji section or even the English translation, which I grabbed of animelyrics.com, which would have a talk about at the end of this. So it's just to look at which, like where, because the thing is with Japanese, similar to Chinese, if you're familiar with that language, is that unlike English, there's no spacing. So it's sometimes very difficult to sort of even notice where one word starts and one word finishes. So that's where Romaji really helps, in the sense that you can see each section of a sentence, like the phrase is all broken down, so like word by word almost. Whereas if you look at the original kanji text, you don't see any of that. Say, for example, たまにはいいこと言うんだね. So たまに or たまにはいいこと言うんだね. So that's how it would get split up. なんてみんなして言って笑った。明かりもない道を。バカみたいにはしゃいで歩いた。抱え込んだ孤独や不安に押しつぶされないように。真っ暗な世界から見上げた。星空は、No, that was wrong. 夜空は星が降るようで、いつからだろう、君のことを追いかける私がいた。どうかお願い、驚かないで聞いてよ。私のこの思いを。Then, part. あれがデネブ・アルタイル・ベーガ。君は指さす夏の大三角。覚えて空を見る。やっと見つけた織姫様。だけど、どこだろう、彦星様。これじゃあ一人ぼっち。楽しげな一つ隣の君。私は何も言えなくて。本当はずっと君のことをどこかで分かっていた。見つかったって届きはしない。ダメだよ。泣かないで。そう言い聞かせた。強がる私は臆病で、興味がないようなふりをしてた。 だけど、胸を刺す痛みは増してく。ああ、そうか。好きになるってこういうことなんだね。どうしたい？言ってごらん。心の声がする。君の隣がいい。真実は残酷だ。言わなかった。言えなかった。二度と戻れない。あの夏の日。きらめく星。今でも思い出せるよ。笑った顔も怒った顔も大好きでした。おかしいよね。わかってたのに、君の知らない私だけの秘密。夜を越えて遠い思い出の君が指をさす無邪気な声で。So that is all the lyrics read through once. Now, what I'm going to focus on is the first verse so it's going into the chorus. The first part we're going to be looking at is 真っ暗な世界から見上げた. So gazing up from this pitch black world. So technically, 真っ暗. Some of you might recognize this particular term here, 暗い. So it means dark. And ま is for really. Like it's an emphasis, 真っ暗. You can also use it with other things like colors, for example. If you want to say something is blood red, 真っ赤 would like 真赤 blend together, 真っ赤. That would be one word, one way of using that. 世界, world. 見上げる is to look up. So this one similarly you can split up. There's a 見る. That's to look. And then 上げる. To look up. So in translation, of course in English you would sort of make it sound a little bit neater. So you'd use gazing instead of just looking up from this pitch black world. And in terms of the grammar, like what Tyreek did mention before as well with the particle of na. So you'd use an adjective to noun to describe. So say if we didn't use 真っ暗, and instead of the na particle, we wanted to use i instead. Let me see what was 暗い世界. So instead of saying 真っ暗な世界, you can use 暗い世界. It was a similar meaning, but of course 真っ暗 is more emphasis on it being pitch black. And then the second line, whereas 夜空は星が降るようで. So what I want to, the vocabulary we're looking at now is night sky, which is 夜空. So it's a combination of 夜 with 空. So combine that and you get 夜空. So you basically take out the る and then you add a dakuten on top of the so because it's going after another particle. That's 夜空, that becomes one word. 星, kanji we've got here, we've looked at before. And 降る. So now this particular verb, to use with, things falling, especially from the sky, we're looking at precipitation, like rain, hail, comets, even snow. They all use the 降る verb. But you can also use it to describe anything that falls down from the sky, not necessarily any sort of natural phenomenon. Then moving on to the particles, which is the grammar side. So that's wa. So you see both wa and ga being used in this particular sentence, and they both mean is. But in the first one, 夜空は星. So your focus there is on the stars, which is why it's a wa. And then you use the ga after the hoshi. Hoshi ga furu. So going by both of these, your focus is in the hoshi, no matter which way you pull this. 夜空は星が降るようで. Now the yo, sometimes you might see it in a kanji, which I cannot write, but it's the same kanji as sama. Yo, but it's pronounced the same as yo. That means seems like or like. And the de is just an emphasis on the speech. Technically, if the 夜空は星が降るよう that would have the same meaning, although it wouldn't flow as well. Then I'll probably think of an example as how we would use your later on, but you'd notice hearing it quite a lot in anime speech as well. Then, so this sentence here, I've actually split up. You see on the top right corner here, so this is the full translation of the entire phrase, but I've split it up here. So I've got いつからだろう and then 君のことを追いかける私がいた. So that's the full translation of those two lines, but I've just split it up just to sort of show how the order of sentences in Japanese can be really quite different from English, but also similar in a way. So this in itself is quite explanatory. So, いつ, when, いつから, from when, so which you translate to since when as a meaning. だろう is just adding at the end of the sentence to mean that it's a question. いつからだろう, なんだろう, どこだろう. So that's where the I wonder comes from. It's an emphasis on it being a question. Then 君のことを追いかける私がいた. So the translation that's been used for this is, well, the translation in the actual lyrics is, since when I wonder, have I been chasing you? But you would actually notice that if you translate everything literally, it's 君のこと, so it's you, and then 追いかける, chase, and then 私がいた. So if you literally just plonk this in, say, into a translator with the key verbs, you might have the subject switch the other way around, so that you chase me, but actually it's you who I chase, almost. So 追いかける私がいた. So that is, if you remember back to Tyreek's side of the presentation, いた is because 私 is living. So it's not 私があったではなく私がいた。So, 追いかける君、私。So this particular part here, 君のことを you might hear a lot, especially in sort of romance anime perhaps, or in a context where someone say confessing to someone, 君のことが好き. They don't just say 君が好き as much, 君のことが好き. So the こと, it can mean a lot of things. So that's as a thing, like a physical thing, like a noun, a matter, a circumstance, or even a situation. So this is quite broadly used, and I'd probably go into that a little bit more towards the end. But so that's just the emphasis on the order of the thing. So if you translate everything literally, it goes, since when I wonder, I who has been chasing you has been there, but that doesn't flow in English. So it would just get simplified to this. Now, next part, again, a very similar sentence, どうかお願い. So どうか comes from どうにか, somehow, but どうか. So there's more of that begging nuance. It's please, somehow, please. And お願い, that should be a phrase that most of us are quite familiar with. So if you take out the お and just have 願い, that would become the noun for a wish. So so you put the お in front of it to make it a teinego, and as the language sort of evolved, it's just turned into a verb. And the next line we have 驚かないで聞いてよ. So here we have the verbs to be surprised, 驚く, and to not be surprised, to flip it the other way around, 驚かない. And to listen, 聞く. And just with this particular kanji as well, is worth breaking up. So we have this plus, and I do apologize to anyone who can write kanji better than this, but my stroke order is atrocious. This probably should have started first, but this is what it breaks up as. And this is ears, mimi. So it's 聞く. And you would also see this kanji to ask as well. Ask. It's the same meaning. Or the same kanji, should I say. It's the same pronunciation. It's like a homophobe. It can mean to listen or it can mean to ask. But in this particular scenario, it would be to listen. Listen to me. So we have, so the actual verb, the imperative is 聞く, but in this case it's 聞いて. So that you're asking for someone, you're asking a subject other than yourself to listen and not explaining that you yourself are listening. So the de that I have here is actually, it's not the one in the end, it's the one this one. I'm looking at 驚かないで聞いてよ. So that is the verb plus verb. So another example I can sort of fit into this particular scenario is 急いで来てよ. So that would be hurry and come. 急いで来てよ. So that this bit is to come, that's to hurry, and there's your de. Okay? And then the last line that we're looking at in detail is 私のこの思いを. So I'm assuming 私 is a phrase that is not foreign to anybody here, and to add the apostrophe s for possession is not. So 私の. And now the emphasis here is この思いを. So it's not any feelings, it's these particular feelings that we need to be looking at. So that's, because technically, if you, I don't know what I pressed, but technically, if you just put 私の思いを, that would mean the exact same thing. But 私のこの思いを, there's more emphasis on the actual feelings themselves. And especially with this here, what I wanted to look at is if we actually go back to the full sentence. So don't be surprised and listen to these feelings of mine. You can actually flip this around. So you can say 私のこの思いを聞いてよ. 驚かないで私のこの思いを聞いてよ would be the exact same meaning as 驚かないで聞いてよ私のこの思いを. But that's why this particular sentence ends on an or, which might be not something you'd see stereotypically in like a correct structure of a sentence, because grammatically speaking, the verb should come after the or, but because literature and this is a song, so with the way of positioning the lyrics that way, it would still technically work. I'm not sure whether there's anybody else who's like me, but sometimes I will say half a sentence and then realize that I should have had something in front of it. And you then sort of just jumbling your words up, but still the meaning is there. So what is the two that we just looked at that? Then these particular links that I wanted us to focus on. Now if I get out of full screen, and I will be discarding the lines, but so there's two websites here. Oh, the omoi. That's a good point. I just saw, yeah. So the omoi, that is because when I typed it in, I did not henkan to the correct kanji. Well spotted. But, so when I type in omoi, so there's a number of different kanji you can use for omoi. So in this particular case, it's because we're looking at the noun feelings, so it's this particular kanji, but the verb to feel or to think, you'd remember omoi, or omo, should I say, if I can type. There we go, omo. So those are very similar with one of them, but omo, it's literally just to think, is not necessarily tied into feelings as such. It can just be any thought, whereas omoi is very specific, that it's an emotional term. As to why it uses this particular kanji, I cannot answer, because my kanji isn't great, as in I don't know the roots of each kanji. Most of them is pretty self-explanatory. For example, you can both of them, or with the omoi, and also omo, we have the heart. So it's something you feel with your heart, kind of, almost like. But yes, this particular, it can be pronounced as so, as in kanso. similarly in Chinese as well, this particular kanji, you can actually pair them together. And they both mean to think. It's the fascination of language. 思想. See? So this is the particular term to think in Chinese, or a thought, and it uses both of those kanjis. Now then, what was I doing just now? I've forgotten. One moment. So we were going through the lyrics, and then there was a part I think Tyreek went through about the E and the NAT, so we went through that. I have lost the plot. One moment. Where was I?
Oh
yeah, I was looking at the
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Yeah.
There we go. So these are two links that I've included, which really helped me when I was sort of looking at ways to explain the ga and the wa particles, and also the term koto. Because it, as Tyreek's mentioned as well, Japanese is very nuance-based, so let me get those things opened up to start with. Edge will do. Okay. And whilst those are loading, I'll actually open up the original page where I got my lyrics, which is animelyrics.com. It's a brilliant website that I have been using for over a decade. So sometimes you can see the actual YouTube video linked in with the song. So it will have the translation. You can choose to have it display in Romaji and English, like so. Or so it helps when everything is very much aligned, and anything that's in katakana, like nebu, arutairu, and bega in this particular case, will be in all caps. It's very obvious that these are non-Japanese words. And then the kanji view is particularly helpful, I think. So you can actually hover over any of the kanji, and it would show you how many strokes, how many readings, and what the meaning is. So if you just look at that, it could be kon, kin, ima, or na. So in this particular phrase, where it's konya, so you're using the first pronunciation with this word ya, yo, yoru, meaning night or evening. So the one downside to this particular function is that it doesn't show you the phrase. So for example, with here, we've got totsuzen, which meaning sudden, but it would only give you totsu and zen as two separate kanji, so it doesn't actually give it you as the word to look at. So for the meanings, I would recommend going back to the Romaji in English lyrics, but if you're just curious as to the kanji itself, you want to learn more about that particular kanji, then this view is really useful. Now let me open back up the pages I was looking at. So this was the one for using the particles of wa and ga correctly. So this particular web page goes through the particles in greater detail. For example, the basic differences, it shows you emphasis on what they are used for. There's a lot of examples. There's an overall review, and I think this website in general is really useful. For example, like no and or and other expressions. Then going back to the other link, which I probably didn't open properly. There we go, share that again. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of different ways of using the word koto. There's a thing, is an activity, or is an ability. So it can be a definition of a thing, a matter, an incident, or a circumstance. For example, 私は勉強することができません. I cannot study. So in English, it's I cannot study. It's literally 4 words, but when you put it in Japanese, you can lengthen it out to 私は勉強することができません. But actually, if you just put 私は勉強ができません, they are very similar meanings, but there are subtle nuances, which this particular web page is doing a really good job at. No, it's not here. Where did it go? Did I open it on Chrome? There it is. But it does a really good job of explaining through the examples of what the differences are between using koto and not including it in. So just looking at this phrase, common patterns for nounifying certain verbs. So アメリカに行ったことがあります。So I've been to America. Or 寿司を食べることがありません. So normally you wouldn't put ありません after 食べた, but if you include こと, it means that 寿司を食べる. This whole thing is a scenario. It's a verb that you did or did not do. So it just helps to group everything in front of the koto as one phrase. Like it just unifies it as one phrase. So I think that is it for myself, unless there are any other questions, which I'm more than happy to go through. And just a bit of a preview as to what's going to then happen next week in our more intermediate lesson. I'm going to look at more specific phrases. For example, I'm going to look at, for example, makura and furu and other things, other verbs that at a glance don't seem to make sense. You don't understand why it's translated the way it is. I'm also going to look at the specifics of certain words, where they come from, how you can use it in sentences in real life. So look at examples, perhaps even look at synonyms and opposite words. Okay, so I don't know if I should carry on sharing my screen now, because I'll just
you could probably turn it
stop
off
the screen share.
Unless you could
How
play
do
through the
I
song
do
one
it?
more time.
Is this it? I certainly can.
Maybe.
So change Windows. Although I think I closed it, so you'll have to bear with me.
It's alright.
Cool.
I wonder, I'm not sure if this is going to work, if you shared the application on your PowerPoint. Oh no, actually no, that's not going to work.
But you said it didn't play.
No, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about playing the YouTube video in the background and then playing the lyrics, but I just realized that might not work.
No, give me one moment. I'm just busy exposing my YouTube here. Kimino Shiranai Monogatari. Okay, so we'll just run through this one last time.
いつも通りのある日のこと君は突然立ち上がり言った今夜星を見に行こうたまにはいいこと言うんだねなんてみんなしていて笑った明かりもない道をバカみたいにはしゃいで歩いた抱え込んだ孤独や不安に押しつぶされないように真っ暗な世界から見上げた夜空は星 残酷だ言わなかった言えなかった二度と戻れないあの夏の日きらめく星今でも思い出せるよ笑った顔も怒った顔も大好きでしたおかしいよね分かってたのに君の知らない私だけの秘密夜を越えて遠い思い出を君が指をさす無邪気な声で
Yeah, awesome. So
Mm.
yeah, wait, you gonna say something?
No, I was just going to say that that's it.
All right, cool. So yeah, thank you for coming. And what was I gonna say? Okay, so yeah, basically, if you also have like a song that you're listening to that you're interested in, maybe a Japanese, not Japanese, from a Japanese person, but if you want like some understanding of what the lyrics mean and you want to suggest a song for a future lesson, just suggest it in the general suggestions chat. That particular song. I know one person did that already, and we can maybe look at it for a future lesson. Or if you have a suggestion for any lessons in general for the future that you want to look at, whether that's a cultural lesson or looking at a particular aspect of Japanese grammar, then by all means you can suggest that as well in general suggestions. And yeah, so we'll meet next week, same time next week, and we'll go through the songs in more detail. And hopefully we can see you there. Also, any feedback is greatly appreciated of what you thought of the lesson. You can just put it down in the study room suggestions. Any thoughts that you have, that would be really appreciated. And hopefully we can just improve and work on lessons that will suit all of you here. And for those of you who've missed the lesson or you want to review it again, hopefully I will get this lesson onto the YouTube channel as soon as possible. You can, if you go to lesson RSS, if you go to that channel, there's already links to the lessons done in the past. There's a few more I've got to upload from before, so I'm still working through them to get them uploaded, and hopefully we'll get this one uploaded as soon as possible. Yeah, so thank you for coming, and yeah, see you next.
Yep, thank you for myself as well.
Yeah.
It is my first time doing this, so especially I'm interested in the feedback or constructive criticism. If there's anything that I did or said that was confusing, or you think, oh, maybe you talk too fast, you should slow it down a bit, just let me know. Anything like that, I accept all feedback. And hopefully next week would be better for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Although you were great anyway. I actually was watching the lesson. I was like, oh, I've learned something myself. So I was like, okay, that's really cool. Okay, cool. Ben, you thought might be to do with math.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was literally just looking through the lyrics as well, and I noticed, I think, because I was typing it kimi no koto o, because the last syllable is an o. So if it goes kimi no koto o, it would sound more weird than kimi no koto o. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, so
Go on.
yeah, it's something that I learned about like a while ago when I was in choir. Like, if you wanted to keep the syllables going, you would sort of connect it. And if you're thinking about how your mouth shape is from E to O, it's more likely you're going to go E-O rather than E-O, where you'd have to kind of stop the vocals rather than A. Oh, sorry, other way around. A-O or E-O, E-O, A-O. Sort of E-O sort of flows better just to kind of emphasize the particle a bit.
Yeah, and on a link to that one, because with how Tariq mentioned the kanji he, the he as in to go towards somewhere, dokoka e iku. So the only scenario why would you pronounce the h sound in that particular hiragana is if it's at the start of a sentence. So like a word hebi, you would use that. But whenever it's used as the meaning that Tariq was explaining, it's always an e. You would never say dokoka he. It just doesn't happen.
But I think in terms of those particles anyway, you'll be able to know the difference between when you'd say e and he. When you see sentences and when you're like listening.
Yeah, especially when you say it out loud, it becomes a lot more obvious, like what sounds awkward and what doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if we say something like, for example, it's like difference between wa or ha, you'll get used to knowing like which. If you're reading, you'll get used to which one you say what for and which one you wouldn't say what for. And usually when you see ha as a hiragana by itself, it's usually probably the subject what. I've not rarely seen it by itself and it's part of a word. And that's the only time you'll see ha maybe by itself and you pronounce it as ha if it's part of a word containing other hiragana as well. But usually if you see it by itself, it's usually wa. But those are just small things to look out for, but important things as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And in songs, it's more likely to be a ha as well, but not kind of like a ah. I'm not explaining this well either. It's sort of half and half, so it sounds a bit nicer. You can't exactly distinguish which one it is in the song without listening to looking at the lyrics.
But I think fortunately as well, when you listen to the song, I guess you listen to the whole context of it as well. So if you're unsure, then it'd be more like what's going on in the rest of the like what you're listening to. How does it all connect? Okay, it probably pronounce this word like this based on what's happening in the rest of the sentence and things like that. But yeah, that's a good point. Hi Maggie, don't worry. I'll upload it to YouTube soon. And next week we're gonna have a lesson.
Yeah, there's another one next week.
Same time, 7:30. So you can come to that one as well. Hopefully. So yeah, cool. We'll probably sign off now. I'm going to upload Sentence of the Day in a bit as well. So if you guys want to do that, I'll upload that in a bit. So yeah, cool. All right, yeah. So thank you everyone, and またね。
またね。
またね。